God-level duplication system. Chapter 53. One palm. Very soon, the two of them went up to the ring and stood opposite each other. The competition begins. The deacon judge by the side announced when Kui said coldly, "Lin Xuan, although I don't know what method you used to deceive everyone, including Grand Elder, but at this point you won't be able to continue hiding it, right? You will be defeated by me." Many of the disciples had never seen Lin Xuan in action before, so they had their doubts about Lin Xuan's strength. There were even a small number of people who didn't believe that Lin Xuan had such powerful strength. Wang Kui was one of them. As soon as Wang Kui finished speaking, he attacked. Rock-shattering fist. Wang Kui threw out a punch. The force of his punch was strong, and it was like a mountain-breaking stone. It was a powerful punch. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw this. Just by looking at Wang Kui's punch, everyone knew that he had the combat strength of a top 20 warrior. After that, everyone turned to look at Lin Xuan. They wanted to see how Lin Xuan would deal with Wang Kui. Lin Xuan sneered. He was too lazy to talk nonsense. They didn't have enough experience, but in the end, they said he was lying to them. They were lying to themselves. It just so happened that he would let them understand what reality was and what strength was. He could also earn some energy points at the same time. After that, Lin Xuan also struck out with his palm. Shocking wave palm. Lin Xuan struck out with his palm, bringing with it waves of energy. Her power was not any weaker than Wang Kui's punch. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, they struck with their palms. At this moment, Wang Kui's expression changed drastically. He felt as if thousands of waves were surging toward him. The power was so strong that it seemed as if it could shake the sky. He was extremely shocked. How could a chi-gathering stage like him be able to withstand it? In an instant, Wang Kui knew that everything that had happened in Puppet Tower was most likely caused by Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's strength was really strong, and he didn't try to hide anything from him. However, he couldn't accept it. That was why he didn't believe that Lin Xuan was very strong, and that was why he took the initiative to challenge him. He wanted to expose Lin Xuan and take the opportunity to make it into the top 20. But now it seemed that he was wrong, very wrong. Not to mention other things, even the power of this palm was far from what he could withstand. Wang Kui's heart could not help but surge with traces of regret. Unfortunately, it was already too late. In an instant, after a crisp sound, Wang Kui's fist fell down powerlessly. Lin Xuan's palm continued forward and landed on Wang Kui's chest. The sound of bones cracking was heard. Wang Kui's chest instantly caved in. After that, with a loud explosive sound, he was sent flying as if he had been hit by a cannonball and crashed into the ground. At this moment, Wang Kui's body was covered in injuries, and blood was flowing out of his body. He was almost a man covered in blood. His breathing was weak, and he was seriously injured. When the crowd saw this scene, they went silent for a moment, and then a commotion broke out. Wang Kui has the strength of a top 20 expert, but he was defeated by Lin Xuan. Am I seeing things? Furthermore, he is seriously injured. With such injuries, I estimate that he will be lying in bed for a few months. Who asked him to be so arrogant? He has pissed senior brother Lin off. It seems like senior brother Lin is really strong. I estimate that there are only 3 great experts in outer sect who can fight senior brother Lin, right? It's very likely. All the disciples were shocked. They never thought that Wang Kui, who was obviously in the top 20, would be defeated by Lin Xuan, who was only a beginner-level warrior for a month. In other words, Lin Xuan, who was only an early, enlightenment stage warrior a month ago, now had the strength to surpass most peak of chi-gathering stage warriors. His strength really shocked all the disciples. No one in outer sect could compare with Lin Xuan. Not to mention the outer sect, even in the inner sect, no one could match him. Even among the core disciples of the sect, there were only a few who could compare with him. Lin Xuan was worthy of being praised by the third elder. His talent was really strong. At the same time, the doubts they had about Lin Xuan's performance in Puppet Tower were mostly dispelled. After all, Lin Xuan had already revealed his strength, which was at least comparable to the top 3 of the outer sect. It was also possible for him to achieve this. However, a few of them still had doubts in their hearts. This was because Lin Xuan had broken through to the 6th level of level 1, opening up the entire puppet tower and even destroying the last Iron Man. Furthermore, he had only used less than a minute's time. This was no longer something that the disciples of the outer sect could do. Even Chen Yuzi, who was already in the Qi transformation stage, had used up 3 minutes of his strength. Lin Xuan's talent was extremely high. Among the true disciples, there were very few who could compare with him. But in the end, he still hadn't grown up. It was already considered pretty good that he could break through to the Qi gathering stage in just a month's time. In the eyes of the disciples, it was impossible for him to have such terrifying strength. On the other side of the crowd of disciples, Zhang Tao and Zhang Mingliang were badly frightened. They were stunned for a long time before they finally reacted. They could see the deep shock in each other's eyes. At the same time, they felt lucky. They didn't expect Lin Xuan's talent to be so strong that it had far exceeded their expectations. In just a month's time, Lin Xuan had reached the peak of the Qi gathering stage. The speed at which his strength was improving was simply unheard of and unimaginable. Fortunately, they had seen that Lin Xuan's talent was extraordinary. They had paid a price to resolve the conflict between them and Lin Xuan. It had only been a month, but Lin Xuan already had such strength. How terrifying would he become in a few months' time? They couldn't imagine. This had already exceeded their scope of understanding. At that time, if Lin Xuan wanted to take revenge, not to mention them, even their family wouldn't be able to stop him. At that time, they would truly fall into the abyss. Fortunately, they resolved their grudges in time. At the same time, they secretly made up their minds to never provoke Lin Xuan again. They still had to take the initiative to befriend Lin Xuan. This had a lot of benefits for them. Although they didn't have much hope, they still wanted to give it a try. The other new disciples who came to watch the show also had complicated looks in their eyes, and their hearts were filled with mixed emotions. None of them had passed the elimination round of Puppet Tower. They didn't even have a single Qi gathering stage. However, Lin Xuan had killed a peak of the Qi gathering stage in an instant. He had entered the top 20, so there was a high chance that he would advance further. The gap between them was so huge. They couldn't believe that they were both beginner-level warriors together with Lin Xuan. However, the truth was right in front of them, and they had no choice but to believe it. In the end, they could only smile bitterly. There would always be a genius among the disciples. And one of them was Lin Xuan. With Lin Xuan around, their generation of disciples would be remembered. However, because of Lin Xuan's presence when others mentioned their generation, they would only mention Lin Xuan and ignore all of them. Lin Xuan had already surpassed them by far. Lin Xuan was like the moon, and they were like dust. They could only silently look at him from behind.